Hello, and welcome to my lore walkthrough video of my world. This video, we will be discussing the lore, so we'll be walking around and discussing the lore of the world. Also be giving some background information on some of the build, and be showing some Easter eggs and stuff as well. So a little background on the world. I started this world back in 2013. I originally started it as a testing platform for my other project called the United Kingdoms of Minecraft. So back in those days, I used to make other maps and test building styles on them before I would implement them into that project, just because, you know, if I built something and didn't like it, it was easier to just get rid of the world than destroy the build. So that's what this was originally, but over time, this world really captured my imagination, and I ended up abandoning the United Kingdoms of Minecraft and made this my full-time world, and I've been going at it ever since. So I'm in approximately the spot that I first spawned. After so many years, I can't exactly remember where it is, but it was somewhere in this area. And if you see this big structure, this big dam structure, this is the first thing that I built on the world all those years ago. So we will walk to that. So I built a little pathway to get up to the kingdom up there. And this is the kingdom of Vulharenjiard. So Vulharenjiard is part of a confederacy called the Azerath Nations. So the Azerath Nations is a confederacy of kingdoms that all fall under a dynasty. And the dynasty basically acts as a unified government. So dynasty laws must be followed by all the kingdoms, but each kingdom has their own autonomy. Vulharenjiard is part of that confederacy, and it is also the oldest nation in the confederacy. So it's the first nation to be established, the first kingdom. It was established by a god king named Draemor the Brave. And Draemor the Brave, he founded this kingdom of Vulharenjiard after the barbaric wars. So the Azerath Nations used to be a collective of independent tribes, and these god kings came down, one of them being Draemor the Brave, and they defeated the barbaric tribes to the south, and then unified the tribes into a kingdom. So this is the oldest one because it's the first one established. So some world lore is the reason why Vulharenjiard is the oldest kingdom is because this is actually the first thing that I built in this world. So this is the building test that I made all those years ago. This was originally supposed to be it. I wasn't supposed to go any farther than this, and I ended up building more and more over time. So over here is the palace. It's called Hero's Blade Palace. This is where Draemor the Brave lived, and this is where the current king lives. This is the interior. This is the throne. And here is an altar to Draemor. So if I click this button, you see that he blesses me. So yeah, this is his palace. You can kind of... So at the time that I was quite inspired by Skyrim. I was going through like my third playthrough back then, and you can kind of see the Skyrim elements. So, Heroes Blade Palace has a hidden little chamber back here. So if I go through this, you can see that there is a nether portal under here. We're not going to go through it, but yeah, it's underneath the palace. Get out of here, we just come through here, through this house, and here we are. So most of Vulharenjiard's citizens live underground. So all these buildings up on top here are all wealthy citizens, while most of the population lives underground in apartments. So we can go down here and you can see that there are apartments here. This is where the citizenry lives. So it goes down pretty deep. And by pretty deep, I mean it doesn't go that deep at all. I blocked it off because I meant to build more, but got bored of digging and stopped. So maybe one day I'll continue building, but I mean, that was like 13 years ago that I stopped building, so. So we're going to cross this dam over here. So this dam holds back a big body of water, which is over there. I'll show it to you in a second. So if I jump up, you'll see it holds back this big body of water from spilling out over there. So over on this little peninsula here, this is all just shops. But there is a secret society called the Order of the Red Skulls. It's more of a underground mafia, and they actually have a secret hideout over here. So if we go to this stall here and open this chest and actually stand in the right place, we're now underneath the market down here. Is a little secret hideout of the Order of the Red Skulls. So the Order of the Red Skulls, like I said, is kind of like it's an underground criminal organization, kind of like a mafia. They operate illegal gambling halls, brothels, stuff like that. We come down here, there's a little altar, and you can make a little offering, so I can offer this stone brick wall. Click this button. And in return, I get a potion of strength. So. To exit, you just go down this exit here into this body of water so you don't hurt yourself. And that was that little secret society. Just going to drop this. Yeah, and that is Vulharenjiard. So a little fact about Vulharenjiard. So Vulharenjiard's king is the only king in the Azerath Nations that is not a direct descendant of their god king, Draemor the Brave. So Draemor the Brave's heir was assassinated hundreds of years ago, and he didn't have an heir, so somebody else took over. All the other nations, their kings are direct descendants of their god kings, but Draemor the Brave's bloodline died long ago. So we're going to walk across this bridge. And right now we are entering Jaarjiadia, but we're going to skip Jaarjiadia real quick, and we're just going to go to the left here and talk about another nation real quick. So this is Dinsfurd. Dinsfurd is the smallest of the Azerath Nations. It only has a couple dozen citizens. It is also the first nation to not be founded by a god king. It was founded by a rich landowner that owned this mountaintop here in the First Dynasty era. So Dinsfurd is mainly known for its covered market. So whenever snows comes, they don't have to be snowed out. The market always runs because of this cover. So yeah, Dinsfurd is pretty simple when it comes to lore. So we are entering the kingdom of Jaarjiadia. So this is the second oldest kingdom. It was founded by the god king named Vulharenjiard the Conqueror. And Vulharenjiard the Conqueror established Jaarjiadia after his brother, Draenor the Brave, established Vulharenjiard. So this is the second kingdom that was established by unifying tribes of this area. So at the time, Vulharenjiard named his kingdom Morthia. So it was the kingdom of Morthia at the time, and Morthia originally just encompassed this area to the west, where the palace is on this mountain, and to the west was a kingdom called the Kingdom of Vulharenjiard, and that was a rival kingdom. So Vulharenjiard the Conqueror is named Vulharenjiard the Conqueror because he liked conquering things, and the first thing that he conquered was the Kingdom of Vulharenjiard. So he went to war in the east, conquered Vulharenjiard, and he proclaimed his dominance over Vulharenjiard when he kicked the king of Vulharenjiard off of the mountain to his death. And then he unified the area and put it under Morthia's control, and then he built his palace on top of the hill as a dominance thing. So Jaarjiadia is known for its colleges. So it has a lot of magica colleges. There's like the College of Brewing, stuff like that. So if you want to learn magica, which is the magic system, you can go to one of the colleges in Jaarjiadia and really get skilled in it. So Jaarjiadia is really known for its colleges. Over here is the oldest structure in Jaarjiadia. It is Pacers Noir. It was built about 1,500 years ago by the tribal people of the time. It is unknown the purpose of this structure. It is believed that it was a worshipping structure of the old religion, but it is upkept by citizens of Jaarjiadia, which is why it's still standing. So it's quite dilapidated, but it's still here. So we'll go up and we'll check out the palace. So this is Vulharenjiard Palace, named after Vulharenjiard the Conqueror, the God King. He built it. Let's go inside. So it's all filled out in here. If we go upstairs, here is the king's throne. This is where he sits. And we can go out into the balcony here and overlook the kingdom of Jaarjiadia. And then over here is the king's quarters. I actually quite like this room here. 2 fireplaces, gets quite cozy during the winter. So yeah, so I quite like this palace a lot. One of my favorite builds. The 2-tower structure is nice. So I said that in the past, when it was founded, this kingdom was called Bermethia. So in the First Dynasty era, one of the direct descendants of Vulharenjiard the Conqueror came to the throne. His name was Prince Morduus, and Prince Morduus didn't even have time to mourn his father, because right after the funeral, he saw that his kingdom was burning. And this is because a prince, a far-off tribe that Vulharenjiard conquered years ago, had led his army into the city and was burning it to the ground. So years before, when Vulharenjiard was going through his tribe, Vulharenjiard actually raped his mother, and this is before he was born. And after he was born, he waited until the king's death, and he decided to get his revenge and conquer it. He was successful. He very easily took over the kingdom, and he killed Prince Morduus, and he took over the throne. Now, I said earlier that the only Azerath nation whose current king is not the direct descendant of the God King is Vulharenjiard's. So, the reason for that is because the prince that took over, his name was Midius III. He was the baby that was produced when Vulharenjiard raped his mother. So he was the bastard child of Vulharenjiard, so he technically is the direct descendant of Vulharenjiard the Conqueror, which kind of made it easier for him to become king, because even though he was illegitimate, he still was a direct blood descendant. So he took over, and after he took over, he renamed the kingdom to Jaarjiadia, and he really grew the empire. So he really led Jaarjiadia at his peak at the time. So there is a little Easter egg here. So if you see between this tree is a chest, and in this chest is a book called The Black Market. It gives you a little spiel. It says, to the non-criminal who wants freedom to sell, go to the base of where the god is worshipped, place a button beneath the cobblestone. So this is telling you an entrance to an underground hidden market, and it's actually over here. But there's actually a little more fun way in the original way that you can get down there, which is through this prison. So the Hall of Justice here. You can get in here. There is oak buttons. I'm going to just take these. You see there's a guard. So there's a guard here as well. And there's a man in here. Let's actually try to get this man out. Oh. Oh. Shoot. I've been imprisoned. And if I place the button here, oh, there's a little hidden entrance. See the Criminal Brotherhood and the Black Market. Come down here. And we are in the sewers. So you can see there's a little black market down here. So you can buy things like harming potions and poison and stuff like that. So if I want to get out of here, I just cross this bridge. There's this button. Gotta run through, and we're out. So an interesting fact about Jaarjiadia is that Vulharenjiard the Conqueror is the one who drafted the Azerath Treaty, which ended up making the Azerath Nations. And due to the fact that he was the one that drafted the treaty, he made Jiarengrad, or Morthia at the time, the first dynasty nation, so the lead nation of the dynasty. And this was unfair to all the other nations, because the Azerath Treaty basically monopolized the dynasty to just Jiarengrad. However, when Vulharenjiard the Conqueror died, the other nations got together and were able to revise the treaty to the Dynasty Treaty, which it is today, which changed some rules, but also made it possible for other nations to become the Dynasty Nation. Another feature of Jiarengrad is that it has a functioning bank. So this is actually something I've been working on for a while, and this is one of the few working banks in the world. So I brought up a little sidebar here. So the world has a gold system where you can purchase goods and stuff like that. And you can exchange your gold, actual physical gold, at the bank. So the old system, or the original system that I established, it uses a gold currency, so gold nuggets, gold bars, and diamonds, and gold blocks, and you can exchange those things for gold to actually purchase things, because you can't purchase things with physical currency. So if I go in here, I could talk to the bank teller. Let's withdraw. And let's withdraw some gold nuggets. Let's do 64 of them. Yes. So you can see I got 64 gold nuggets, and it took out of my gold here, so I can have physical currency. But if I wanted to convert my nuggets into gold that I can use, because I can't use it in a physical form, I can just talk to the bank teller again. Deposit my gold nuggets. Let's do all of them. And then I'll wait for the bank teller to actually tell me the transaction is complete. There we go. And there we go. So a functioning bank. One of the few. And I guess a little behind the scenes, the whole bank's running system is underground. Down here. So here's all of its command blocks to make it run is down here. It's also up on the roof, because everything when it comes to these command blocks are distance oriented, so if it's too far away, it doesn't work. I'm committed to not using any mods. Can't remember what they're called, but yeah, trying to keep it as vanilla as possible, so that's how it works. But yeah, so Jiarengrad has one of the few banks. This takes forever to make, so I'm working on it. So there's a church here. So the religion of the Azerath Nations is God King worship, so they worship the God Kings. So here's the church. And this is where my book told me, under the place where you worship the God Kings, you can find the entrance. This is the second entrance that I made. I made it a little bit easier to find than the old way. Just come out here. And you go around. It's over here. So you place the button here. Yeah, well, that was... Oh, underneath. Doy. And there's the entrance. So, underneath these. Yep. Alright, I'm gonna fly. Cheat a little. Alright, and then the next thing to talk about is this clock here. So this is a clock tower. This is the first ever and only clock tower ever built. It functions off of a sundial. And what it does is it is more of a time indicator. So when there is one light at the bottom during dusk, that means workday begins. Then when there is two lights up, that means it's noon and it is lunchtime, so all the shops close, they go for lunch while the two are on. And then it will go back to one when it peaks over noon, and then it will go back to one and everybody returns to the shop. And then at night, both are off, and when both of the lights are off, then everybody returns home and all shops close. It's legally bound for that. So we can go into the clock tower and it actually tells you how it's supposed to work. So 2 on midday, 1 on sunrise and sunset. Alright, that is Vulharenjiard. So we'll go to the next kingdom of the Azerath Nations. So this kingdom was founded by Prometheus the Lustful. And Vascova is historically the richest kingdom in all of the Azerath Nations, because it sits atop a very, very healthy emerald mine. So Prometheus the Lustful, he is named the Lustful because he lusted over treasures. He was very into his treasures. And that came into a very bad era. So when Prometheus the Lustful was king and he was alive, his mines were doing pretty good, but there was a lot of labor that was missing. And at the time, he wanted to basically get free labor, aka slavery. But he did not want to enslave his inhabitants. He didn't want to enslave human citizens. So Prometheus the Lustful is actually extremely racist against elves. So there was a kingdom, we will be going through it here shortly, and there was a kingdom called Morthia. It was an elven superpower that bordered the Azerath Nations. And before the Azerath Nations became a thing, Prometheus the Lustful led a combined army of all the kingdoms of his brothers and invaded Morthia in a war called the Great Slave Roundup. And due to being unprepared for an invasion, Morthia was crushed, and the kingdom was quickly taken over, and all of its inhabitants that could be captured were enslaved, and everybody else fled into the Forbidden Forest to the north. And I will be going over that more shortly. But yeah, so Vascova is the reason for the Azerath Nation's long elf slavery history, which was pretty bad. There is his palace. We'll be going up to it. So Emerald Crown Palace. So here's Emerald Crown Palace. Let's go inside. So if we go all the way upstairs, here is the throne. So this is the throne of the King of Vascova. But there is a nice little hidden secret down here that Prometheus the Lustful actually kept. So as we venture down there, I've been calling all the God Kings by their full names, and in Azerath society, it is actually offensive to call the God Kings by just their given names. So if you call him Prometheus, it is offensive. You have to call him Prometheus Lustful. It is just a taboo not to. So that's why I've been saying it full. But if we come down here, let's go to the library. So this looks like a dead end, but if I place a lever onto this, here's a little hidden entrance. And here is Prometheus's... Here's his gold stash. For the kingdom of Vascova. But the real riches are hidden even more. So we go over here, you'll see that there is an inconspicuous block here that is kind of tarnished. Oh. And here is the real riches. So there's a little emerald throne here. These chests are full of diamonds and emeralds. And back here is Prometheus Lustful's grave. And then a little journal that he left. So he's surrounded by his riches. All right. So, we're going to take a little tangent from the Azerath Nations, just because it is easier to walk through while I'm going through Vascova first, but let's walk to it. Alright, so over here, this is a district, so this is the back market district. And there's a lot of stores and markets over here, but in the mountain cliff here is basically a big old statue called the Vascovan Head. So the Vascovan Head is a giant constructed head that was here during the tribal era or even before. So it's actually quite mysterious on who built this head. Nobody knows. Now, there was an ancient race of beings called giants, and we will be seeing more of giants later. They've been long extinct. But some scholars believe that giants actually built this statue long ago, and it's just been buried to time, because you can see that its shoulders are buried. Now, we can actually enter this head, and the head used to serve as a medical bay during various dynasty wars. So the dynasty in the Azerath Nations is actually taken over by force. It is inherited by the dynasty nations kings until another king comes and takes the throne. So dynasty wars happen quite often. But we can actually be inside the head, so you can see that there's some heads here. But there is an actual Easter egg in here, and you can see that one of these blocks has a button on it. So if you click this button, it takes us to a password generator. Here we go. And here's a little hidden Easter egg here. So you can return, you can get a god sword, which I don't know if it works anymore. It does not. I didn't fix the code. A lot of this code was written in like a decade ago, and it's all changed. A little tune. Some credits. So this credit, so you can see that it's called the Azerath Nations. So the world now is called the Gilamarna, but it was originally called the Azerath Nations because I didn't think I was going to build past the Azerath Nations, but I ended up doing that. And then a couple of years ago, I changed the whole name. Click this. Takes us to a firework display. Very fun. And then we can return. There you go. See a little secret there. So if we head over here, this is the farming district of Vascova, and this is another store, so you can actually sell your basically your harvests. So if I had wheat, sell it here. You can see that my gold goes up as I'm selling my wheat. So yeah, so there's a little store here, and this is one of the only examples of stores like that. Again, I'm working on it, building it, but so I'm gonna fly and kind of cheat a little bit here. Just because I didn't build this in, but there is a path here, and the path used to continue over here, but many years ago I accidentally corrupted this world and deleted all of this area over here. And I got it back a couple of years ago by using MC Crafter, so map mod. I was very happy about getting it back, but I didn't actually connect the two together successfully yet, so. But we'll cross over here. And here is Haasperosia. So Haasperosia is basically a shanty town. This is where criminal organizations really base themselves out of, and it is actually run by the Order of the Red Skulls. So the Order of the Red Skulls are from Haasperosia, and they have proxy groups in the Azerath Nations. So this is really where they base themselves out of, because they actually control Haasperosia. And that is really the only interesting thing about Haasperosia, is it is a shanty town. Yeah, I can go up on the walls here, kind of follow the walls along. So if you float over, I can float over here, and you'll see that there is a destroyed town, and it's called Morthia. So Morthia was conquered by Haasperosia, is conquered by the Order of the Red Skulls, and if you can see over here, they put their banner over Morthia's banner here and destroyed the town. So it's a territory of Haasperosia, but it was destroyed long ago. So what I did was I built this up. I actually built this completely and then set fire to it and some TNT to actually make it look like it's destroyed. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, they put their banners up everywhere. All right. So let's get back on track over at the Azerath Nations by going floating back over to Vascova. All right, so that was Vascova. So let's continue on over this way. And we are entering the King's Forest. So the King's Forest is neutral territory. So this is not owned by any of the nations, and it's actually owned by all the nations at the same time. So it is quite dilapidated because none of the nations want to really pay to take care of it, but it houses the Palace of Kings. So if you see over here, the Palace of Kings, and it says neutral territory. So this is where the dynasty actually is housed. This is where all the kings of the Azerath Nations meet. So the dynasty is made up of all the kings of the kingdoms, and one of those kings is the dynasty leader, and that king runs the dynasty. So we'll go in here, and this is the big table, and this is where the dynasty meets. So every year, once a year, all of the kings meet in this room and discuss dynasty politics, where they will either pass dynasty laws or not. So I actually have a video that explains how dynasty's government works. So I would suggest you watch that to see how the dynasty works. But yeah, this is where the dynasty meets. And this flag is the dynasty's flag. So we can go upstairs, which is in the back. And there are all of the nation's flags here, as well as books that talks about their facts. So I haven't done all of them. As you see, a lot of these chests are empty. But yeah, really, since I've moved on to writing a wiki, I've neglected writing books in the world. But I'm trying to work on that. But yeah, this is the Palace of Kings. All right, so to the right here is Harlemruud. So Harlemruud is another Azerath Nation kingdom that was not founded by a god king. This one was founded by Talia Harlem. And Harlemruud means Harlem's land in the Franish language. So the Franish language is the old language of the Azerath Nations. They currently speak Azerathian, but the old language is Franish, and Harlemruud means Harlem's land. So Harlem was a rich landowner, and he bought this land from Baasvonclad, which is the next kingdom we will look at, and he seceded several years after because he did not like these restrictions placed on him, and then he established his own kingdom, and then it became a member of the Azerath Nations after he really got with the other kings and really made his alliances clear and convinced them to let him in as an Azerath Nation. This is his palace. It's called Snowtop Palace. And let's go see his throne, which is upstairs. So here is the throne of Harlemruud. And then there's the bedroom of the king. You look outside, there's a big window and see a nice ocean view. Other than Harlemruud being another nation not founded by a god king, its history is pretty unremarkable. So we're going to move on. The next kingdom, which is Baasvonclad. So Baasvonclad was founded by the god king Perlimus the Smart. And Baasvonclad is actually the biggest of the Azerath Nations, so it encompasses a large amount of land. So, at the end of the Barbaric Wars, the southern area where the barbarian tribes used to be was given to Perlimus the Smart. And he had the daunting task of unifying the defeated barbaric tribes into a kingdom. So it was quite hard for him to do, but he ended up doing it. He ended up unifying it, and he based his nation off of technology, because Perlimus the Smart is named that because he was very much into technology, and he was a very intelligent king. So we're going to go up to his palace called Charlemagne Palace, which is on top of the mountain. And here is the throne of Baasvonclad, what the Baasvonclad king is. There's a dining hall here. We go down here. There's actually a dungeon. So let's go down to the dungeon. So yeah, so there's a dungeon down here, and it is all underneath the palace. It's not super interesting to look at, so I'm not really going to explore the labyrinth of it, but yep, it does have a dungeon. And then if we go in here, this is actually a burial site of different kings. So you can see all the different kings of Baasvonclad over the years. And there's skeletons. And there is another hidden area here. So let's get a lever and let's destroy this. There we go. And this is a place where the coffers are, and also a secret meeting place during times of war. It's down here. Quite low in funds, it looks like. Nothing over here, so. We can enter the library. So like I said, Perlimus the Smart, he was very intelligent, so he really liked to read his books. It's a large library, and then if we go up these stairs, here's the king's quarters. So this is where the king sleeps. He's also got a nice view out his window of his kingdom. Alright, so let's float up and go down. So yeah, so Baasvonclad is the current dynasty nation, so it's the 6th one. It's been ruling for 236 years. Legends say that when Perlimus the Smart, when he went mad, he wasn't seen for many years before his death. And his soul haunts secret catacombs. And there is actually a little hidden quest line that I made. I'm not going to show it. I have videos on it, or I'll make a video later. I have old videos of it, but it does exist. And this here is the first ever functioning bank. So when I was developing banks, I started with the Bank of Baasvonclad. So this is the first bank that I ever made. So I already showed you how it worked, so I don't have to belabor the point, but this is the first one. A lot of its mechanisms are actually up on top of it. But also a lot of the mechanisms are actually buried down under here. I'm pretty sure that this is the entrance to it, yeah. So here's a lot of the actual inner workings of it over here. So yeah, this is the first one. Took me a very long time to build. Alright, so another little secret. If we go into this house here, you'll see that this block is a little bit different. If there's a different block, usually place something on it and it's a hidden door. This is Writers Anonymous, so this is actually my room, and this is where I keep all of the books in the world. A lot of books are not done, so you can see those are finished ones. There are a ton of books that are in progress. There are scrapped ideas that got, basically they were rendered obsolete when I made more lore. There's a lot of books that are written and a lot of that are not finished. So they are all housed under Writers Anonymous. I make sure that every time I write a book, I put them in here. So that's a little secret for you guys. And it's actually the reason why I couldn't build the bank's command blocks underneath, because Writers Anonymous is down there. So, but we'll head over here. To the Backlands district. So Baasvonclad, like I said, it's the biggest of the Azerath Nations, so it has a bunch of districts. There's a Cloud Scraper district up on top there. But we'll go over here. And Baasvonclad actually has an extremely intricate catacomb network. So Baasvonclad catacombs. So I dug this out over a very long period of time. So let's explore the catacombs. So this is where basically all of the inhabitants of Baasvonclad have been buried since its existence. So there's the Baasvonclad catacombs. This is where the normal people are, and then there is the where the elites live, and a lot of the royal family and stuff are buried over here. So we'll explore the Baasvonclad part first. So you can see there's a lot of bones. They're also buried down there, a lot of bones. There's more bones down in there. It's filled up with water at some point, so we're going to wade through the water here. So everybody that's buried in an actual niche is a little bit more wealthy of a citizen, or a little bit more well-known. The vast majority of basically everybody else, they get buried into a big old pit like this. So this is a lot of skeletons that are just kind of thrown around of the poor and average citizens. There's another side over here. So let's go over to this side. And this side has a bunch of different families. So all of these families, basically their tombs, are each unique. So we can go to each one, and they all look different. So this is one family, for example. We can go next door. See, that looks a little bit different. See, the matriarch is right here. And the patriarch is out over here. I'll show one more over on this side. That one's a little boring. I'll actually show another one. So, yeah. I got a little less creative on this side, to be honest. It's because it got very boring digging all this out. But yeah. So, this is the Baasvonclad side of the catacombs, where the normal citizens are. But let's go to the other side, where the more elites and the royals are buried. They're buried on the other side in their own tomb. So yeah, more niches. This one's a little bit more labyrinthy, so we'll go through it. These are more family burials. So yeah, but this isn't for families. I said families, but these are actually for individuals. So a guy named Gladius was buried here with his diamond armor, stuff like that. So true warriors are buried in these specific niches. But we'll keep going. Very long here, but we're almost toward the end because it's worth it. You see that there is a door here. Let's go through. And it's like a hidden forest. And there's a house built in here. And this is where Perlimus the Smart is buried. And he's actually buried with his longtime servant, Gordani Heavenspula. And they actually wrote to each other. So they each have a little thing in their chest. So I dug this all out. I built this big old tomb in here that houses a house. You can see these cobwebs. This is the old smoke system that I used to use. Now I actually use smoke from campfires as smoke, but I decided to keep a little homage to how I used to do it for the fireplace. But yeah, this is Perlimus the Smart's tomb. Alright, so I'm going to teleport back to the entrance, so I'll see you in a moment. Alright, so next we are going to go to Devonshire, which is the next of the Azerath Nations. So this is Devonshire. Devonshire is the most unique out of all of the Azerath Nations. It was founded as an independent kingdom, and then it joined the Azerath Nations much later. And the reason why it joined the Azerath Nations is because it wanted to engage in its trade network. So Devonshire, it was falling on hard times, so they decided to join the Azerath Nations. Now, the reason why this is controversial and a bit strange is because Devonshire is a very different type of nation. It is a totalitarian regime where every aspect of the citizens' lives is controlled. They're also notorious for being extremely anti-elf. So this is a human kingdom, and they worship the Devon religion, which is where the name Devonshire comes from. And in the religion, they have a pretty bad and heated bigotry toward elves. But Devonshire, again, is a totalitarian society, so everything is controlled. And an example of this is the Ministry of Labor. So a Devonshirean citizen, they'll go to school, and then they will grow up, and they will get a job. And instead of applying for a job that they want to do, they are given a job by the government. So they will receive a paper in the mail with their job that they qualified for via tests, and then they would come to the Ministry of Labor, turn in their slip to get their job, and get rolling. So you can see, give labor script here, you'd give it to the man, you'd enter through here, and you'd go through a series of checkups and trainings. You will receive a job book, which the job book will actually describe what your job is. But yes, so it will tell you what your job is, and then you will go out along your way and begin your job later that week. So over here is the most infamous part of Devonshire. This is the Ministry of Justice. So this is where prisoners are held and where you are held court. Now, due to the totalitarian regime, it is extremely unfair when it comes to the justice system. So you come in here, you'd have your detainment, in which you're usually interviewed. You might be tortured for information. And then once you confess to your crimes, you were sent to Baasvonclad prison. So this prison is one of the biggest prisons in the mortal world, and I will be showing a bigger prison later. But this prison holds tons and tons of prisoners, all from political dissidents to petty thieves. But this prison is also where elves are kept. So, as I said earlier, Devonshire is extremely anti-elf, and this goes to the point where they are on an active campaign of exterminating elves. Now, elven treatment in the Azerath Nations has changed over the centuries. It used to be very bad. They used to, all of the Azerath Nations used to practice elven slavery, but when slavery was banned in the Azerath Nations, Devonshire was forced to stop slavery, but they continued to do anti-elf activities. So mainly these days, they will fund terrorist organizations, so human supremacist terrorist organizations all around the mortal world, and they will also kidnap elves from the Azerath Nations, even from other countries, and they will bring them to this prison. And when they're brought to this prison, they're brought to the death camp. So down in the basement, these cells are crammed, packed full of elves, as you can see, just waiting to die, basically. So, an elf will be taken from their prison, and they will be sent to this room. And in this room, as you can see all the bones, this is where an execution will take place. So, I can demonstrate this with a pig. So the prisoner will be put into this chamber and closed in, and water will fall on top of them, and they will drown. Once the subject drowns, their bones are collected and thrown into the fire. So pretty grim. So while all elves' lives in Devonshire are quite bad, the humans who live here, the citizens, their lives are also quite terrible. They're controlled completely, so their labor, their food rations, they are even controlled in reproduction, so they can only reproduce in certain periods of time. And if any child is born when they're not supposed to be, they're killed, and the parents will be thrown into the prison. So we are looking at the Wood District. So the Devonshire is split up into districts. So there's the Wood District, there's the Stone District, there's the Iron District, and the Diamond District. The Wood District is where the poorest of the citizens live, and actually where the most citizens live. So they're given small houses, and they are crammed all together, and they just live in the Stone District. So it's very slummy here, a lot of crime. Being in the Stone District, it is terrible to live in, but they are given a little bit more freedom just because there's so many that it's hard for the government to actually keep track of them. If we come over here, this is the Stone District. So the Stone District is the market district, but the market owners, so the shop owners, they actually live in the Stone District. But this is where everybody does their shopping. So they will shop for food, shop for wares, whatever. It is all in the Stone District. So now we're entering the Diamond District. So this is where the upper class live, the highest of society. Mostly rich landowners and government officials live here. Actually, it's primarily government officials that live here. So you can see these are all mansions. These are the least controlled of the population, so they don't have a lot of oversight. They're the most free, and they also live in the most decadent lifestyle. Over here is the Iron District. So this is where the middle class lives. So they aren't as poor as the Wood District, but they aren't as rich as the Diamond District. So they are pretty much in the middle class. And when it comes to society, they are also a little less controlled than the Wood Districts. They don't fall under such as big a scrutiny, but they definitely aren't as free as the Diamond District. And up here is actually one of my favorite palaces that I built on this mountainside, which is the Palace of Devon. And this is where the king lives. So you enter, it's right into the throne room. This is the king's bedchamber here. And he also has a bath in here. And this is the dining room for the royal family. The nice fountain in the middle. So many nations have condemned the Azerath Nations, but specifically Devonshire, for their support of human supremacist terrorist organizations. But it never stopped Devonshire from actually doing any of this stuff. So what keeps all of the citizens in line is a police force called the Wunderkrans, and they are basically the secret police. Here's where executions take place. You can see some heads on some pikes up there. But we're going to float up. So, this is the Wunderkrans training command. And this is where the secret police train, and this is where they actually live as well. So they all live in this building. And they enforce the strict rules that citizens of Devonshire have to abide by. And that is Devonshire. So we'll head down here. And this is what is called the Horizon Road. So the Horizon Road is a very long road network that stretches all the way to Jaarjiadia, which is the southernmost Azerath nation. So we will be going there later, but right now we'll go to the next Azerath nation. This is the next Azerath nation. This is Devfraern. So this is the newest of the Azerath nations. It was the last to be admitted into the dynasty, and it was also not founded by a god king. We already went through all of the Azerath nations that were founded by god kings. But yeah, Devfraern is pretty quiet, sleepy little kingdom. The name Devfraern means sunflower, so Dev in Franish is sun, made off of Devon, and Fraern is flower. So little non-lore background, this is the most recent Azerath nation that I built a few years ago, and it is the last one I built, so the Azerath Nations is done. But unfortunately, I haven't had much to work on its lore, so it's very sparse thing to talk about, because I just haven't really gotten into writing its lore yet. Unfortunately, I just got a lot of stuff to work on. Here is the castle. I am a big fan of this castle. I actually really like it. I probably said that about every castle, but I don't know. I like this one as well. Yeah, so this is the royal family's room. Go up here, it has its own study with a glass dome and their own balcony. So, yeah, unfortunately, not too much to talk about when it comes to Devfraern right now. The last thing I'll say as we leave is that Devfraern is one of the Azerath nations that has not been a dynasty nation. So all the other nations, except for Dinsfurd, has been a dynasty nation, but Devfraern has not been. And it's kind of owed to the fact that it's a pretty new member. All right, so we are going to travel down the Horizon Road to the last Azerath nation that I'll show, which is Jaarjiadia. So walking down the cobblestone road, there is Bausmerdian. This is just a small little village that is tucked underneath the bridge of Cobblestone Road. I'll just show it off real quick. Yeah, a small little tiny village down here. And then there's the bridge that we will be going over. And then it has a little port out over here. So I'll just flip back up to where we were, and we will continue our journey. So let's cross the bridge. Alright, so over here is Aandoraax Palace. So this is a no trespassing palace. This is a palace that was abandoned. So we can go inside. There is really nothing in here. It's dark and gloomy. Let's get some light. There is the throne. But yeah, this is an abandoned palace. Nobody knows what happened to the inhabitants or who lived here, what the monarch controlled. Could have just been a rich guy, but yeah. And then in the middle of the palace is this big tree that's been growing, and it's nice and healthy. Let's continue through the cobblestone road. Alright, we are at the entrance of Bastiolion Desert. It is an extremely dangerous desert, so you can see here it gives you a little warning to be prepared. So there is Azerathian, aka English, on the left, and then on the right is a Jaarjiadia. So this is a Jaarjiadian language. You can open this chest, and it gives you a little desert guide on survival. So it has in Azerathian text and also has everything in Jaarjiadian text. So you can go through the survival guide and see what you need to do, but if you can't read Azerathian, you can read it in Jaarjiadia. So. But let's continue. Alright, so over here is Melyndor. This is a Baasvonclad territory. So this is just a small little kingdom that is owned by Baasvonclad. in this little savanna here. And you know that it's a Baasvonclad territory because of this blue stripe on the top. So when Azerath Nations have territories, they put their color of their nation at the top of the banner. So alright, and we have finally arrived at the final Azerath Nations, which is Jaarjiadia. So, Jaarjiadia is a desert kingdom, and it is probably one of the most unique kingdoms in the Azerath Nations, because it is, first of all, so far away, but it's also, its culture is very different. So it kind of relates to Devonshire in that sort of way. Jaarjiadia was founded by two brothers, Theo and Leon. According to legend, they were travelers through the desert, and they stumbled upon this little oasis area in the desert, which there is a big lake over there, and they decided to build a small little village on top of it, scripting up some nomads in the process. So over here we will see the big lake, which is what provides all of the water for Jaarjiadia. There is a temple over there as well that was built by the ancients. So Jaarjiadians speak Jaarjiadian, and you won't be able to understand what they are saying at first. So we can go up to one of these shopkeepers, and you can see that they speak Jaarjiadian. But if we learn their language, we can actually understand what they are saying. And you can understand their language by going to the language school. So the language school, you just open this chest and you can learn their language. I'm not going to do that because it's just going to reset everything, and I do want to keep the language as it is right now, but once you do read the book, you will be able to understand them. Everything will be in Azerathian. So this is the market of Jaarjiadia. So you can buy things from here. So Jaarjiadia actually gets a lot of its sustenance and food from this farming land here. Now, this land is actually man-made, so it wasn't like this in Theo and Leon's time. But engineers, Jaarjiadian engineers, they were able to divert the water from that big lake to feed this area and create an oasis, and they were able to grow food here. So all of this land is green because of Jaarjiadian engineers and their water diverging. So this is the palace of Jaarjiadia. It is probably the most famous part of the kingdom. Obviously, this is where the king lives. It has gold domes. We can head inside. Up here is where the royals' room is. This is where they sleep, do their studying, all that sorts of stuff. There's also a library here. And finally, the bathhouse. So it has this massive bathhouse. You can cool off from the summer heat. So. So Jaarjiadia was introduced as an Azerath nation pretty late in the existence of the Azerath Nations. It became an Azerath nation as a way to exploit trading routes. So much like Devonshire, it was introduced so it could take advantage of trade. And that was important for Jaarjiadia because they were falling on hard economic times due to trade issues, especially long-distance trade issues. So through insurance and having to trade with the Azerath Nations, which is so far away, it just was cost-effective to basically become an Azerath Nation and not have to worry about import taxes or anything like that. And Jaarjiadia is also a kingdom that has not been an Azerath nation. And that is mainly due to how far away the nation is. First of all, it is believed that the nation wouldn't be able to manage the Azerath Nations dynasty very well due to its distance, but also the way that the Azerath Nation dynasty works, which is a feudal system. So the dynasty nation is acquired through blood or selling. Basically, how it works is the dynasty is held by a king and it is passed down to the king's son. But if the king's son is assassinated or they decide to sell the dynasty or any other way, just like give it over, then the dynasty will be given to that nation and a new dynasty nation is taken over. And a new dynasty nation will be crowned and a new era will begin. And Jaarjiadia was unable to just take part in any of that. It wasn't rich enough to buy the dynasty. It couldn't really participate in any of the wars due to distance, so it's just kind of been by itself all the way out in the desert here. So yeah, that is Jaarjiadia. Alright, so we are at the southernmost builds. So to continue on, we'll need to head north. And to tell, while we are walking, I can tell some behind the scenes lore as we prepare to go north. So, I mentioned earlier when I was in Vascova that the combined Azerath army, which this occurred before the Azerath Nations formed, but the brothers combined the army together, they invaded the Kingdom of Morthia in a war called the Great Slave Roundup. So, the Great Slave Roundup was basically exactly what it sounds like. They rounded up slaves, Elvish slaves, and they enslaved them and made them work in the mines. Basically, that was a big thing, was working in the mines. They also did a lot of farm labor, stuff like that. This was a huge and massive cultural change for the Elves. So in the Azerath Nations, for hundreds of years, the Elves would be enslaved. There are many different elf races. So there was Wood Elves, there are Morthanian Elves, etc., etc. So the Wood Elves would end up going extinct due to this terrible atrocity against them. But a major race that lived in Morthania were Morthanian Elves, and they were enslaved in the Azerath Nations. Over time, the Azerath Nations, they developed their own elf race by doing selective breeding, in which they were able to develop the Franish elf race. So the Franish were developed as a specific slave race, and they were farmed for slavery, and they were basically treated like livestock. So when the Franish came around, the Morthanian elves and other elf races that were in the Azerath Nations got a little bit of an easier time. They tended to start working in more, they would be like house slaves and stuff like that. The Franish were built to be strong, and they're also built to be extremely unintelligent, so they wouldn't rebel. And that was quite an unfortunate side effect. Now, the Azerath Nations did ban slavery eventually in the 4th Dynasty era. And once they banned slavery, all these elves were freed, including the Franish. And the Franish today are an underclass in the Azerath Nations, and a vast majority of them live in the underground network of apartments in Vulharenjiard. So they're very deep underground. They don't really see a lot of daylight. Now, when Morthania was invaded by the Azerath Nations, the elves that did not get enslaved or captured fled, and they fled into the Forbidden Forest. The Azerathians had a superstition when it came to the Forbidden Forest, where they would not go into it. It was considered cursed. You would never return. So any elves that fled in there, they were basically gone to the Azerathians. Well, they didn't disappear and they didn't die. They ended up fleeing to a small Morthanian-owned village called Devfraern. And we are going to head to the kingdom that they ended up developing on the other side of the Forbidden Forest. So we will head up there now. And instead of having to walk all the way through everything, I am just going to teleport there. Alright, so I'm at the northern part of Jaarjiadia. Jaarengrad's back there. And this is where we will begin our journey toward the Forbidden Forest. But there are some things to show. So you can see that there's statues built on top of these hills here. So this statue is unknown, its origin, but this carving is called the Tomb of Tenkannen. So it's an actual tomb. It was carved into the side of the mountain by an ancient race, and it houses a tomb of an elvish noble who believed that he was a god. Now you can see that there is a block that is out of place. So, rule of thumb, block out of place. Someone probably opened something. And this is the actual tomb of Tenkannen. So you can see that this is his tomb. Now, this was supposed to be a mini game, and it's actually not fully done yet. It's in the works, and it's been in the works for probably a decade now. But I'll just click this button and show you a little bit of what I got. And that seems to be it. So, unfortunately, like I said, this is a very old mini game, so it's probably broken in there. It's actually supposed to continue, and he's supposed to disappear and all that, but at some point I'll have to fix that. But for now, you're just gonna have to stay like that. Alright. Let's continue. So here we are at the northernmost reach of the Azerath Nations, at a Baasvoncladian territory called Portside. So this small village, it borders the Forbidden Forest. Now, the Azerathians had a superstition in the Forbidden Forest for centuries, but they no longer have that. They actually do have a relationship with the northern kingdoms north of the Forbidden Forest now, but we are going to venture through and head to the next area. So you see, you're entering the Forbidden Forest. Let's enter.